see who's going to be in the elections and all that stuff. These people are bad-mouthing these people. Those are bad-mouthing others. And I'm not going to get into politics, but that's exactly what they're doing. They're just bad-mouthing each other. They each have their own agenda. Some want to control the border. Some want gun control. Some of them want some weird stuff. But, that's basically, it's what they want. It's not what we need as a people. They have the issues on gun control, like I said, and they keep restricting. But one thing about it is, a lot of things that didn't go happen in the media is Christians are being targeted right now. I mean, we are. I mean, not only overseas, they got it bad. They're getting persecuted, and they finally declared it genocide, finally. But they have it really bad. But what's going on here? All right. In September 20th, 2011, a couple got fined for having a Bible study in their house. They got fined $300, and there was only 3 people there, the husband, the wife, and somebody else. And they got fined. That was in San Juan Capistrano, California. So they had to go get lawyers because they had to pay the fine for having a Bible study. And they paid the fine, and then they got a lawyer because the city attorney said he was going to come after him again because that was their home church. So they was going to get fined every Sunday $500, every Wednesday $500, and every Sunday night $500. And he was starting to talk about going into the parking and everything. People were gathered there. He said there's restricting roadways and everything. So they had to get a lawyer. First judge, he took the case. He looked at it. He said, "No, I'm not granting your appeal." Didn't even hear him out. So they had to go back again. And that's when the appeal was upheld. And it was dismissed, and they got their money back. But they lost all that time and effort. They had to pay for a lawyer. But why? They were specifically targeted because he was a Christian. They're being targeted for investigations in businesses. I know some of y'all probably heard about Franklin Graham and his organization, Samaritan's Purse. They got targeted by the IRS. Other businesses that affiliate themselves with Christians are getting targeted as well. One instance that I know of is PayPal. They shut someone down because they were a Christian organization, suspended all their accounts, and they kept their money for a little while before they finally handed it back, all because they didn't support homosexuality. Just because there was a Christian and and that was their stance. PayPal won't have nothing to do with them. Well, there was a pastor. He was out on the street handing out Bibles. And you know what happened to him? He got arrested. He got told he could not hand out Bibles. Now, it's here. It's not all the way over there. It's here. And politicians aren't going to solve this. We ourselves, by ourselves, are not going to solve this. It's going to take God. God's going to take this. We have to seek Him first in prayer. Now, what happens when we try to do something on our own, like elect a politician? Is it going to do any good? Now, he might correct a few things, but something's probably going to get worse in the meantime. It's human. It's going to get worse. We have to bring God back into it. If you'll turn in, I'm glad we can still serve in the house of the Lord, though. I need to say that real quick. I mean, I'm glad that we still have that freedom and we still have this. Because there's a lot of nations out there, a lot of countries, they do not have that. And I am glad for that tonight. I know. Getting little reminder cues right here. But the thing is, we can't seek our own solution. We have to seek God. So, I'd like to open up for prayer request. Does anybody have a prayer request tonight? If you can turn in your Bibles tonight to 1 Samuel, going back a little ways, chapter 28. This is about the time where Saul's about over and David's about to come into his kingdom fully. We're going to start in verse 3. If you'll stand with me, those who are able, well, as we read the Word of God. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him, and buried him in Ramah, even in his own city. And Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits, and the wizards out of the land. Now, there's a major change here. So that's when the Philistines are coming, as you'll see later. The Philistines gathered themselves together and came and pitched in Shunem, which is a small village of the tribe of Issachar, to the north of Jezreel and to the south of Mount Gilboa. That's to be important later. And Saul gathered all of Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. And when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. Then said Saul unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor. And Saul disguised himself and put on other raiment, and he went, and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night. And he said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring him up, whom I shall name unto thee. And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, how he hath cut off those that have familiar spirits, and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spake to Saul, saying, Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, What form is he of? And she said, An old man cometh up. And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I shall do. Lord, as we come again in prayer to you tonight, I ask that you bless this message and bless the audience here, Lord, the congregation, that we all, including me, receive something from this. Lord, do as you see fit and as you will, but I ask that the Spirit come here and be here tonight, that we may receive insight in this passage. In Jesus' name, amen. As I said earlier, the Philistines are always looking for a fight. And when Samuel died, it was like, now's our chance. Let's go whoop some on them again. Because Samuel, he would prevented a lot of stuff. And the judges before him, they kind of held back on the Philistines. But Samuel's dead now. So the Philistines said, all right, it's time to go get some again. Now, they started right after Samuel died, as I said. But the Philistines, they recognized the Lord. That's why they went after Samuel died. They didn't want to attack him right then, because it wasn't too long ago they learned their lesson. They had the ark in Philistia. In 1 Samuel 4 through 6, and it's not on the slide, but what happened there is Israelites went against war against they went to war against the Philistines. And what happened is they didn't go with God. They went on their own. So 4,000 Israelites were killed. They just killed all of them. So they decided to go get the ark and go back. Because, you know, the ark, when they normally had led that in the battle with them when they had Joshua. And they would win, but they lost again. They lost the ark. And so, and I know the preacher preached on this. It's when the ark went to Philistia, they put it in the temple of Dagon, which is their fish god. Yes, they worship a fish god. I don't know why or how, but they did. And in the first night, Dagon, the statue, it fell down and was worshiping the ark. That's what it looked like. And then the second night, when it fell down, he broke into pieces. And then they sent it somewhere else, another one of their cities. Then they had the rat plague. Rats were just coming from everywhere. And they said, all right, we're going to send it somewhere else. And they had the same problems. And then when they wanted to send it to another city, they said, no, we don't want it. We don't want it. We know this ark has bad problems. So they had to send it back. And again, the preacher preached on that as well, where the milk cows, you know, and they had to take it back, and the baby and all that. And they went all by themselves. I mean, y'all remember the preacher preached on that, right? Yeah, they went back by themselves, and they didn't have to have anybody leading the way. And they sent a whole bunch of gold and stuff on with it, too. They were in the form of the mice. And then, see, the Philistines not only sent the ark back, they sent them an offering back so they would be appeased. And they also sent a fat sacrifice because the oxen, when they got there, they were killed for the sacrifice. So the Philistines knew about the Lord. So when Samuel died, they was like, this is our chance. Because the prophet's dead. He was gone. Now, they gathered at Shunem. Now, Shunem, it was the home of Abishag. This happens a little bit later in history, but it's the woman who took care of Elisha with the never-emptying cruse, and they had the grain that never ran out. And during the drought, they apparently had unlimited water too. The Bible doesn't say that, but they had to have, because you got to have water to make the cakes. But anyway, he took care of Elisha there. Now we all have that place in mind, Shunem. All these places in the Bible, they just keep popping up over and over again. And the reason being is Israel was small. Now, if you could show the map, Randy. That's the size. That's Israel right there in Old Testament times. And it's about 6,600 miles of territory. It's a little bit bigger than the Piedmont Triad. That's the whole nation of Israel. You know, as you read the Old Testament, a lot of times you're like, this is a big place. They got all these things going on and everything. I mean, no, it's tiny. But as you can see where it says Shunem, the Philistines had penetrated, well, it's back here for y'all. The Philistines had penetrated to the very heartland of Israel. They were in trouble. Israelites were in trouble. And they were situated over the plain, because there's Jezreel was right in between those two. It was a vast plain. It was perfect for the Philistine army. You see, the Philistines, they had chariots. And so they would run down and through the valley and on this vast plain to fight, because they had the advantage of the chariots. They had iron chariots. Now, and their archers and their foot soldiers were very well armed. They had breastplates. They had greaves. They had the wristband things. I forget what they're called. They had all that in the helmets, and they had iron technology. They had iron swords, iron spears, and of course they had the iron chariots. You know what Israelites had? Pitchforks. They had sticks. And what happened is the Philistines kept fighting Israel. They kept going over and over, and a lot of times they would win. If you recall back in the time of Samson, they were over Israel. Israel was their vassal. And they didn't let them have any weapons. They didn't even let them have blacksmiths. The Israelites had to go whenever they needed a plow sharpened or basically anything dealing with metalworking. They had to go to the Philistines and pay for it. And then they got charged outrageously. So when it come time for war, they didn't have no weapons. They didn't have none at all. They had 2 swords. 2. They had Saul had one and Jonathan had one. That was his son. That's all the weapons they had. So they was fighting with pitchforks against this army. Well, then they had the chariots, as you can see in the picture. And the next one shows you close up what a chariot looked like. How Pastor described it with that little thing come out and cut people's legs and stuff off. That's it right there. If you're going down the field and the horse is galloping in front of it, and that thing hits you, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to lose something. Whatever it hits, it's going to be gone. And they had a whole bunch of these. In addition to that, they were outnumbered 2 to 3 times. And so when Saul gets up there on Gilboa, which is a mountain range, by the way, it's not a very big mountain range, but that's where he plants his army at. And it's about 5 miles away. So he gets up there, and he's looking down at the Philistine army, right? And what does he see? He sees a whole lot of people. He sees a whole lot of chariots, and he's thinking, they're going to cut us to pieces. I mean, with his own power, there ain't nothing he could do. And he knew that. So, in verse 5, it says, when Saul saw the host of Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. He was so scared. And the reason why he was scared is because he knew that God had forsaken him. I mean, he'd have been told often enough. Y'all remember Samuel? He keeps telling him that. It started when he sacrificed the goat instead of waiting on Samuel. He got told then. He got told over and over and over that the kingdom's going away from him. And so Saul knew. So he was scared. So Saul seeks guidance. Now, where do you think Saul went? Well, he was afraid because he knew God had left him. So where do you think he went? It says, Saul inquired of the Lord in verse 6, and the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. So it said he prayed to him, but it said he also waited on dreams, which never came, which is how the Lord often worked in the Old Testament. But he also asked for the Urim. He also asked for the Urim. Now, I want somebody to raise their hand. Who knows what a Urim is? I didn't know what a Urim was when I read this passage. I was like, what is a Urim? I mean, there's a lot of words in the Bible. It's like, what does that mean? We don't know. Well, I looked it up. And Urim goes back to Exodus chapter 28 and verse 30. It says, thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim. It's another word that I don't know what it is. And they shall be upon Aaron's heart. And when he goeth in before the Lord, Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. Now they were supposed to somehow, and nobody knows how they worked, give the Lord's decisions. The high priest would go into the tabernacle, and with these things, some way, somehow, they were supposed to get the Lord's message. Either to fight or not to fight. Do this or not. That's how nobody knows how they work, but that was their purpose. Urim means light, and Thummim means perfection. And they were supposed to be with the high priest. Now, I find it funny. How is he supposed to inquire of the Urim he's supposed to be with the high priest when the only priest left alive is with David? What happened earlier is Saul killed all the priests. He asked where David ran, and one of his servants said, hey, that he went to see the priest. So when Saul called the high priest up, and his servants with him, the other priest, they wouldn't tell him where he went. They told him they inquired of the Lord for him. They didn't tell him where David went. So Saul got mad and killed him. Then he sent Doeg to kill him. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But he sent Doeg, one of his servants, and he killed all the rest of the priests. And there was only one escaped, Abiathar. So how could Saul inquire of the Urim when he wasn't there? So either way, God didn't answer. He didn't answer him immediately. It's probably a test. How many times did you ask and me ask? We all ask God, and we get an answer just like that. How many times? I hadn't had it happen very often. Sometimes we have to wait. Saul didn't wait. He's like, I got an idea. I'm going to do it. I knew my own idea. I'm going to do what I said. And God didn't answer me. I didn't give him 30 seconds or so. And I'm going to do my own thing. I just put that in. But he did not give him time. So Saul said to his servants, seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servants, they told him, there's a woman, she's got one, and she's an indoor. Now, but if you go back to verse 3, it says Saul had put away those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. He done got rid of all of them. So he was doing something was right by the Lord. You know, he got rid of these people. But here he is asking again. In Leviticus 20, chapter 20, verse 27, that's where it gives the Lord's edicts. It's the Lord's commands, really. It says, look, a man also or woman that hath a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. Exodus 22:18, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Deuteronomy 18:10-11, that's not up there. There shall be not found among you anyone that maketh a son or a daughter to fast to the fire, or that useth divination, witchcraft, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. So these were God's commands, right? And if you go back to verse 3, you can see where Saul had already he followed the commands early on in his reign. He got rid of all of them. But here he is. He's asking to go do exactly what the Lord says no to. The Lord didn't answer him immediately, so he does exactly the wrong thing. He goes against the law of the Lord. And it's kind of silly because he's the one that acted in that time period to enforce it. So he does something right and he screws up again. That's basically what it is. Endor, if you can look at the map again, is north of Shunem, about 8 miles. If you can see it back up there. It's really close to Shunem. It's really close. It's about 3 miles away. Now Saul, when he decided to do this, not only did he put himself at risk, because he is the king, he put the whole Israeli army at risk, because if the king dies, what do you think is going to happen? Everybody's going to run home. They're going to run scared. So he goes and risks himself, risking the patrols of the Philistines, because they're out there searching to make sure nobody's trying to do a sneak attack. And he's putting everything at risk to disobey God, to take his own path. Now, if he got caught, like I said, it'd be all over. But Saul didn't get caught. It says he disguised himself and put on other raiment. Now, that's a lot. When we try to do something, what do? We try to disguise it. We try to hide it. We can't get away. We know it, but we still do it. I really, really, and this is not me personally, really, really, really want that drink. Let me go put a hat on, and let me go to the next town over, and let me go get me that margarita I wanted. I mean, not that specifically, but, you know, we've all done something similar. We've tried to hide as we do our sin. And that's what Saul's doing right here. He's trying to hide it to get away with it. Now, it didn't work with his people because it's in the Bible. I mean, everybody knows about it now. But it didn't work with God either. And he went, and he had 2 men with him. And they came to that woman by night, and he asked her to bring somebody up. Now y'all see why the woman's reaction was so bad. Saul had just got rid of all these people. He killed them. Just like the Bible has said in Leviticus and Exodus. He killed them. So she was like, why are you doing this? You're setting me up. You're going to set me up so I can get busted. You know, it's like today, it's like, where's the hidden camera? I know they're going to get me. That's what she was doing. That's what she thought. And then Saul said that you're not going to get messed up. And we're not going to get in trouble. And not only that, he swore by the God that he forsook. He swore by the Lord that he forsook. And how typical is that today? I mean, we're swearing, a lot of us do, especially when you get mad. You swear by Jesus and put his name in vain. Or you promise something to somebody knowing you're not going to do it. But we do that too. But that's what he did. And it's twisted. And he asked her to bring up Samuel. Now, of course, she knows Samuel right off the bat. Just like that. Everybody knows Samuel back then. I mean, he was the prophet of God. They knew him. She knew that he was dead. So she said, okay, we'll do this. And I find out, when I read, and she accepts so willingly to pull up a prophet of God, she was probably intending on faking it. You know how people do today, the mediums, you go in there and they tell you your fortune. And you've seen it on TV where they do all this stuff. And come to find out, she didn't know anything. She just asked a couple of vague questions and got answers, and they made it look like she found out. I mean, people do that all the time, not just mediums. But that's probably what she was trying to do. And the reason I say that is she's so nonchalantly just, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, once he promises she's not going to get in trouble. And then when he comes up, she's like, ah! She cried in a loud voice. And I'm not going to make it real loud because I might deafen some of y'all. He says, why have you deceived me for your Saul? She was surprised. She didn't have a clue that Samuel would really come up. And she must have just started, for he was like, poof, he was there. I mean, she was scared. But she knew that Samuel came up. She said that Saul had tricked her. So Saul, well, he's seeking advice from a man that he's never asked for biblically. He's never asked for advice during Samuel's lifetime. And he comes and goes against the will of God in consulting with a necromancer to ask the question. And he worships him. He falls down on his face when he perceived it was Samuel. He worships him. And that's when Samuel says, why did you get me brought up? Why did you bother me? And then when Saul explains about the Philistine army, Samuel says, the kingdom is rent from you. You did this. It was your decisions, your actions that brought this to pass. Now, why would Saul seek after Samuel when he didn't ask him for his whole life? He didn't ask anything from him. It's because he chose his own path. Saul chose not to listen to God. He didn't give him time to answer. And he didn't listen to God practically his whole kingship. But he chose his own path. And now, this, in chapter 10 of 1 Chronicles, we see what happens when Saul got his reward for not listening. It said, now the Philistines fought against Israel. This is the same battle. It's just described in 1 Chronicles. And the men of Israel fled from the Philistines and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons. And the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab. And I want to say Mr. M because I can't pronounce that name. The sons of Saul. And the battle went sore against Saul. And the archers hit him. And he was wounded of the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through, lest these uncircumcised come and abuse me. But his armor-bearer wouldn't do it, for he was sore afraid. So Saul took a sword, and he fell on it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell likewise on the sword and died. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his whole house died together in that one battle. It says, and when all the men of Israel that were in the valley saw that they fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, then they forsook their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. So Saul, his whole family, and probably a lot of Israelites died that day. And then they lost part of the promised land because of what Saul did. And it came to pass on the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. And when they had stripped him, they took his head and his armor and sent into the land of the Philistines round about to carry tidings unto their idols and to their people. We defeated Saul. We defeated Israel. We did it. But God let them. Then they put his armor in the house of their gods. They were boastful about it. They were boasting. And they fastened his head in their temple of Dagon, their fish god. They believed that they had triumphed when it was given to them. And when all of Jabesh Gilead heard about Saul, then arose all the valiant men and took away the body of Saul and the bodies of his son, and brought them to Jabesh, and buried their bones under the oak in Jabesh, and fasted 7 days. But they couldn't get his head. It was in the temple of Dagon. They couldn't get his whole body. So Saul died in verse 13. So Saul died for his transgression. This is the whole point. Which he committed against the Lord, even against the word of the Lord, which he kept not. And also for asking counsel of one that had a familiar spirit to inquire of it. Saul died because of his own actions. He didn't inquire of the Lord, and God slew him. And he turned the kingdom over to David. All because Saul took matters in his own hands. He's right here. He took his matters into his own hands. And once too often, and not only did he pay with his life, his sons paid, the rest of his house, and Israel paid dearly. Saul didn't ask the Lord. He asked a medium. So God took him out. In our own lives, do we seek alternatives that are not of God? Do we immediately jump to a conclusion and a course of action without asking God what we're supposed to do? God says pray always. He does. It's right there in the Bible. With all prayer and supplication. But we jump to our own conclusions. We jump. We have financial troubles. Do we first seek God? Yeah, sometimes down the line we might seek Him. But a lot of times before we get the right answer from God, we jump. We declare bankruptcy. We borrow more than we can afford. I know that's happened. It's happened a lot in America right now. We have marital troubles. You instantly divorce. Or do you try to seek God? Then you got issues mentally with pills, anger, frustration. There's a whole slew of problems. How many times do we seek other solutions, though, instead of seeking God first? We're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. We all are. God is supposed to be first and foremost in our life. We're supposed to put God above everything else. But if we don't, we do our own thing, we're not putting God first. Now, a lot of these solutions, it might be what God tells you to do. But how are you going to know unless you wait on His answer? Wait upon the Lord. How are you going to know? All right, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose my house. All right, all right, Lord, help me. All right, let me go do the bankruptcy papers. That's not the thing to do. Or, Lord, my wife or my husband, could be either way. We're having issues. All right, we need to do a separation. You got to wait on the Lord, and it's for anything. I'm just using these examples, but it's for anything. Wait upon the Lord. You got to pray to Him, ask Him, and like I said, they may be the correct solution. Some of them, but what if it's not? If we wait, we might get a better answer. We just might. The musicians come. We need to think, what is our first priority? Is it the Lord? Do we seek Him first for all our issues? Or do we seek our own judgment, our own conclusion? There's been countless times I've sought my own conclusion, and it didn't work. It actually made the situation a lot worse. I admit it. I've done it myself. I've made decisions I shouldn't have made. And some of them I'm still paying for to this day. But with the Lord, if we seek Him first and we wait on Him, He has a better answer.
You don't stand with us tonight, page 144 in the hymn book. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Amen.
I thank you for coming out tonight. And I hope everybody learned something, acknowledge that sometimes we don't ask the Lord first, and that we should. Because if you don't acknowledge it, we can't correct it. Lord, I come in prayer again, and I thank you for the opportunity to come and worship in your house, Lord. And I pray that we all here would have a successful latter half of the week, and that we all meet here again Sunday morning in your house, Lord.